The dominant feeling was that their partner's physical pain was just more important, more valid. Focusing on their own emotional pain felt, as one participant put it, selfish.
Welcome to the Sex Science Podcast, where we turn the latest peer-reviewed research on intimacy and sexuality into fun, accessible conversations. Generated by AI and fact-checked by experts, the Sex Science Podcast was created by LaShaw to empower you through knowledge. So, join us as we explore pleasure, relationships, human connection, and everything in between.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're tackling a topic that feels, well, really important and maybe hasn't gotten enough airtime.
Absolutely. We're looking into female sexual pain, FSP, but, and this is the key thing, through the lens of their male partners.
Right. How does this condition, which obviously affects the woman physically, impact her partner?
It's a shared experience in many ways, even if the pain itself isn't shared, and this research gives us a direct window into that.
So our source today is a qualitative study from the UK. Really recent.
Yep. They didn't just crunch numbers. They actually talked to people, interviews and surveys with 26 men whose partners have long-term FSP.
So real voices, real experiences.
Exactly. And our mission today is to unpack what they found. How did these guys make sense of the pain? How did it hit them? How did they respond?
And we're focusing purely on what the research uncovered from these men's perspectives. It's a chance to hear a side that's often, well, silent.
And honestly, some of the things that came out when they were finally asked were quite surprising. It really challenges some assumptions.
Okay, let's get into it. The first big finding was about how the men tried to make sense of the pain, especially before any kind of medical diagnosis.
Right. This initial period of uncertainty, what the study found was, well, pretty heavy. A lot of men initially looked inward.
Meaning they thought it was their fault.
Yeah, or at least wondered if it was. Was it something they were doing wrong? Was their partner just not attracted to them anymore? That kind of self-doubt?
Wow. So the pain wasn't just a physical issue for their partner. It immediately became a question of their own desirability or, I guess, competence.
Exactly. That uncertainty was really difficult. One participant mentioned, constantly wondering if his partner just didn't want to have sex with me anymore or didn't find him attractive. It fills that vacuum when there's no other explanation.
So without a medical label, the default was almost self-blame.
For many, it seems so, which is why getting that actual medical diagnosis could be such a huge deal.
A relief.
A massive relief for some. The study called it a penny drop moment. Like finally understanding, as one man put it, it's an actual thing, something medical, something about her body, not about him.
It shifts the focus, gives it a name that isn't, I'm the problem.
Precisely. It externalizes it in a way. But interestingly, the study also noted that even after a diagnosis, that initial doubt didn't always just vanish.
Really? It could linger.
Yeah, for some, those feelings, that sort of, is it still somehow me question, could kind of stick around under the surface. That self-doubt can run deep.
That makes sense. Okay, so moving from making sense of it, the next theme was about feeling marginalized, like being on the outside looking in.
Yeah, on the outside is how the study framed it. This came up strongly in relation to doctor's appointments and the healthcare system.
Okay.
Men reported feeling just invisible, ignored. One guy used the phrase over there in the shadows. Another felt like doctors just looked through him, talking only to his wife.
Even if he was trying to be involved.
Even then, yeah. And it wasn't always just the doctors. Sometimes the partners themselves contributed to this.
How? By excluding them.
Sometimes, yeah. Maybe wanting to keep appointments private, seeing it as just her issue, which, you can understand maybe, but it still left the men feeling cut off.
Right. Disconnected from something hugely impacting their relationship.
Right.
And this feeling of being sidelined, it affected their sense of agency, like their ability to do anything.
Yes, exactly. The study talks about their potency being affected not just sexually, but their general sense of being able to act or influence things within the relationship, especially around this issue.
So what did that look like in practice?
Well, it often meant hesitation. They became really wary about initiating sex, obviously, but even just initiating conversations about the pain.
Why? What was the fear?
The fear was about how they'd be perceived. They didn't want to seem pushy or demanding or like they were making things worse for her.
So they backed off?
Often, yes. Leading to what they described as, walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around the issue, or just deciding it was better to shut up about their own needs or concerns. taking a very passive role.
Which is kind of the opposite of the traditional script for men and sex, isn't it?
Totally. And there was another layer here, really tough one. Some men expressed this deep anxiety about being seen as a perpetrator.
A perpetrator? How?
Like, because sex was associated with pain for their partner, they worried that even wanting sex or initiating it could somehow be perceived as harmful or abusive, especially with, the broader societal conversations about consent and male behavior. One man literally said he felt almost part of the problem.
Good grief. That's a heavy burden. Feeling excluded and also worrying you might be seen as the bad guy?
It's incredibly complex, and then sometimes partners would try to hide their pain, maybe to protect the man's feelings.
Oh, I can see how that would backfire.
Totally. It just created more anxiety for the men. They became hypervigilant, constantly worried they were unknowingly causing pain, like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded.
So with all that going on, the self-doubt, feeling excluded, fearing being seen negatively,
Yeah.
how did they handle their own, emotional fallout, their own distress?
Well, that leads us straight into the third key finding. They mostly tended to downplay it significantly.
So they were feeling things: frustration, sadness, anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. The study makes it clear they experienced a lot of negative emotions, but there was this strong tendency to minimize their own suffering.
Why? They feel they shouldn't.
Pretty much. The dominant feeling was that their partner's physical pain was just more important, more valid. Focusing on their own emotional pain felt, as one participant put it, selfish. Or another saying, to be self-indulgent, it's fucking hard sometimes.
Like a hierarchy of pain, and theirs was lower down.
Exactly. Almost like they didn't have the right to feel bad when their partner was physically hurting. They might even talk about their feelings in a detached way, like there's anger instead of I feel angry.
Creating distance.
Yeah. But the study, by its very design, asked them directly about their experience. It gave them that space.
And what came out when they were given that permission?
A lot. A really significant amount of distress, actually. They talked about a profound sense of loss.
Loss of what specifically?
Several things. Loss of spontaneity in sex, definitely. Loss of the partner they knew before the pain became such a big factor. Even a loss of the future they'd imagined together.
And anxiety, too.
Huge anxiety about the relationship's future, about their partner's well-being, of course, and definitely an erosion of their own self-esteem, tying back to those earlier feelings of maybe being the cause.
The study also mentioned something specific about shame and masturbation.
Yes, that was really striking. Some men felt intense shame about masturbating. They described it using words like cheating or feeling dirty.
But why? It's not infidelity.
No, it wasn't about another person. The feeling seemed connected to the fact that penile vaginal intercourse, PVI, wasn't possible due to their partner's pain. They felt guilty pursuing any sexual outlet, even solo. It was like, if she couldn't have that, then they shouldn't be seeking pleasure either.
Wow, that really shows how central PVI is in our cultural idea of sex, even when it causes guilt in this context.
It really does, and it just highlights how important it was that the study simply asked. The title of the research paper actually comes from a participant who said, "No one has ever asked me, and I'm grateful that you have."
That quote just says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How invisible this experience has been.
Completely.
Okay, let's shift to the final big theme.
Mm-hmm.
How did these men navigate sex itself? Especially given those traditional ideas like the coital imperative you mentioned.
Right, the coital imperative, this idea that PVI is the main goal, the definition of real sex in heterosexual relationships. The study looked at how men dealt with this in the context of FSP.
And what did they find? Did the men cling to that idea?
Well, this is where it got really interesting. The finding was that the men in the study, by and large, actually resisted this coital imperative in their own relationships and values.
So they weren't fixated on PVI being the be-all and end-all.
Not according to what they reported, no. Despite PVI being off the table or difficult, they often emphasized other things. They talked about intimacy, connection, closeness.
Like what kind of things?
They used phrases like valuing a nice bit of groping or being together and close and like hugging and kissing. One explicitly said sex for him was more like about connection than just the physical act of PVI.
The study calls this shift an intimacy imperative, doesn't it? Prioritizing connection over intercourse.
Exactly. It seemed many were able to adapt their definition of a fulfilling, intimate life. They found value in non-penetrative acts and emotional closeness. Some even felt a bit relieved from the pressure that can come with focusing solely on PVI.
So, the men often seemed more flexible than the traditional stereotype suggests. But you said there was a complexity here, a contrast.
Yes, and this is crucial. While the men themselves often redefined intimacy, they perceived that their partners were still quite bound by the traditional view.
Meaning the men thought their partners still believed PVI was paramount.
They believed their partners assumed that they, the men, still saw PVI as essential and would want it, maybe even seek it elsewhere.
Hold on. So the man is thinking intimacy is key, PVI isn't everything. But he believes his partner thinks he desperately needs PVI.
That's the disconnect the study highlights. It's fascinating. One man said, "Although I had no issue with not having penetrative sex, my partner did not believe me. She kept accusing him of resenting her for it, even though he insisted he didn't feel that way."
So his reality wasn't matching her assumption about male sexuality.
Precisely. Another really stark example. A partner suggested an open relationship, assuming he must need PVI from somewhere. And the man's reaction was basically, "What? It hadn't occurred to me. I've never ever thought like that."
That suggests the societal script itself was causing misunderstanding and pain, maybe more than the man's actual desires were.
It really points that way. It seems the assumption about what men should want, held perhaps more strongly by the partners in these cases, was a major source of friction, rather than the men rigidly sticking to that script themselves.
This whole deep dive, it just paints such a different picture. The men's experiences are so layered.
Absolutely. It's way beyond just managing a physical symptom. It's emotional work, it's relational work, dealing with self-blame, feeling pushed out, managing loss, often quietly and actively trying to redefine what intimacy means for them.
And it really underscores why just focusing on the woman's body, the biomedical side, is incomplete. The partner's experience is deeply intertwined.
You can't separate them. This research, by centering the men's voices, gives us that fuller picture.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much do these unspoken, ingrained ideas about gender, about sex, about what we think our partners must want, how much do they get in the way?
Especially when you're already dealing with something as challenging as chronic sexual pain. The study definitely hints that these differing assumptions about traditional norms were a big issue.
Maybe the simple act of talking about those assumptions, acknowledging them, could be incredibly powerful.
It feels like a really crucial takeaway. Just creating that space to ask and to listen like the study did might be the most important step forward for couples navigating this.
A really powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for unpacking that with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Sex Science Podcast brought to you by LaShaw. We hope that you learned something new about the wonderful world of human intimacy and sexuality, and join us next time as we dive into more fascinating research. And remember, science is for you. Music for this podcast was produced by SOUNDRAW.